views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Daren, Jaime, and welcome to the Social Justice Forums. If anybody's asking the question, what exactly is the Social Justice Forum show? Well, we're a show that looks at the inequities that many people face. We get multiple points of view. We promote civic engagement, and then we have some great guests that have some great dialogue. So we invite you to stay connected to us. The Social Justice Forums begins right now. And welcome back to the show. The Interledger Foundation is a not-for-profit advocate for the web, promoting innovation, creativity, and inclusion by advancing open payment standards, as well as technology which seamlessly connects our global society. Now they're working towards a more equitable and creative global society via open payments network, enabling anyone to seamlessly earn, share, buy, and sell, as well as trade with anybody else in the world. Joining us now to share more is the Executive Director of Interledger Foundation, Briana Marbury. And Briana, good to have you.
Thank you for having me on the show. Very much appreciate it.
Thank you. And so for our viewers, just make us a little bit more aware of what the work of the Interledger Foundation does.
Okay, so the Interledger Foundation is, we are advocates of the Interledger protocol. And what the Interledger protocol is, to put it in an easy to understand way, it is a currency network. So similar to how the internet transfers data from one place to another very fast, the Interledger protocol transfers currency from one place to another very fast. And that comes into a really useful play when you're talking about open payments and what we call web monetization. So say you have Cash App, I have Venmo, we can't pay each other unless we're on the same network. But if they were both Interledger enabled, then you wouldn't have that issue and you could pay anyone anywhere in the world. It doesn't matter if you wanted to pay me with Thai baht to USD or cryptocurrency to fiat currency.
And so when we talk about this, I mean, this is a great piece that people have, and particularly I want to talk about those people who live under the poverty line, because we have a lot of people currently in New York State, New York City, across the world who are living, I should say the country, living underneath the poverty line. And I know some of the work that you're doing is really trying to bridge that gap.
Yes, we are really trying to make the technology at the foundation. We are advocates and stewards of the technology. So we're really trying to make it to where we can use it for financial inclusion. And what that means is a lot of people don't have access to a bank account, or it's very difficult for them to open a bank account. But if you have a digital wallet and you're able to transact money digitally, then you would be able to participate in your economy.
And so we hear the word web monetization. We hear that often. So first of all, define web monetization and how that plays out in the work that you do.
Sure. So the way that we use web monetization is, say for instance, you are a blogger, or BronxNet is a station that is web monetized. And so what that means is your subscribers, like me, for instance, I'm concerned about my privacy. We've heard a lot about privacy with what's going on with Facebook. And so I'm concerned about my privacy. I don't want my information sold. I'm willing to pay $5 a month and support creators that I really enjoy their content. So what web monetization allows you to do is get paid for the content that you create without selling your users privacy. And so I would pay $5 a month to subscribe to a service such as Coil. And since your site is web monetized, every time I go to your site, every second that I spend on there, you get streamed payments. It's called small micropayments. So for every second that I'm viewing your website and interacting with your website, you're getting small micropayments. And so the more viewers that you have, the more money you will get.
Mhm. Pretty interesting there. And when we talk about that, I mean, obviously, a lot of people do need this service and being able to help in the area of web monetization. Where do you find is the biggest gap when we talk about this particular area?
Well, the biggest gap that we have seen are creators who are not like huge yet, right? So a lot of the advertising dollars from the big companies go to the biggest platforms right now. And so if you're a smaller creator, you're kind of left out in the cold. You're not able to make a living wage off of your content that you're creating. And what we're trying to do is bridge the gap to make sure that the people who are kind of starting off, who aren't as well known, have a way to make money off of their content as well.
Mhm. And so there are grants that are actually available. I want to talk about some of the grants and some of the grant opportunities that are available.
Yes, so one of our programs is Grant for the Web. And what that is we look at people who are trying to experiment with web monetization, who want to build on the infrastructure of the Interledger protocol by like adding a node or adding an API. And we're also looking at content creators who are looking at really interesting business models for the web. So for instance, we just did a grant with Crown Magazine, and they are creating a series on Black maternal health. And so everything that they create will be web monetized when you go view it.
Mm. And so when we talk about grants, how can people take advantage of that and who's actually eligible to apply for these grants?
Anyone's eligible to apply for the grant. We have different areas that we look for depending on what we see with the ecosystem. So say, for instance, we are missing some apps or APIs in the ecosystem, we'll put out a call for proposals about that. Say, for instance, we want to do research. If you're interested in doing research about the Interledger protocol and user behaviors, there's opportunities to receive grants around that as well. So if you just have a really compelling idea and that's innovative and a different way of thinking about the earning model of the web and kind of disrupting that and using the Interledger protocol to do that, we're interested to hear from you.
And you yourself, I mean, obviously you're in the tech field, and let's talk about you for a moment. I mean, you're one of the only Black women that are actually leading a major tech philanthropy organization, and you've got a huge foundation that deals with almost $100 million. And talk to us about just the fact that the seat that you're sitting in, because we don't normally see people of color occupying seats in tech.
Yeah, I feel very fortunate to be in the position that I'm in and to be able to have the voice and the autonomy to have the voice to speak to other people of color. I am not from the tech world originally. I am from the foundation and nonprofit world. And so since I've been in this position, which has been about a little over a year and a half, I'm learning about this tech. So I'm new to this world.
Yeah. But talk to us about this, because when we talk about tech and social justice, because this is a social justice forum,
Yes.
a lot of people say, how does tech really correlate with social justice? And there are some huge things that we could actually make the comparison to say that tech and social justice really go hand in hand.
Yes, because there's a couple of ways, right? So when you look at like Silicon Valley, what does it look like? It looks pale and male right now. And so one thing that I stole that from somebody. So one thing that we're looking to do at the foundation is make sure that you have more diverse voices in the ecosystem. And also, when you're looking at the people who benefit off of technology and innovation, it's usually not people of color. We're usually left behind, our voices are not included. And so we really want to change the landscape of tech to make sure that all voices are heard, including underrepresented individuals and people from communities who often are ignored. And so because we move forward with tech, those voices are often left behind, and you're also left behind in being able to advance in other areas of your life, and in our case, and financially.
Yeah. And so what's it been like for you, obviously being a woman of color and in a place that's predominantly, as you say, quote unquote, pale and male? What's it been like for you navigating these circles and really trying to bring more people, particularly in communities of color, into tech?
Yes, so a lot of people are very cognizant of this issue that is in tech. For me, it's been just really trying to find partnerships with other organizations that are concerned about the same things as us, as finding those partners who are, HBCUs who want to partner with us, looking at the Hispanic philanthropy organizations who want to partner with us and are interested in changing the landscape of tech, but also other big organizations too, who may not be known for their diversity, are recognizing that this is an issue. And so they're willing to work with us and talk to us about trying to increase their diversity efforts.
So you do find that there are people who are more receptive to understanding the plight of what's going on right now?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Because DEI is like the huge thing right now. Everybody's talking about DEI. Everybody's interested in trying to increase their DEI numbers. So I don't know anyone in the tech field who would outwardly say like, no, we're not interested in DEI, or we're not interested in expanding the view of what tech looks like.
I was looking at one of your beliefs, and one of your beliefs is that you believe that monetary interaction should be as easy as information exchange. But we do know when it comes to communities of color, that's one of the big barriers. We always talk about this information exchange, that those resources aren't so readily available.
Yes, that's true. And so those resources are not only not readily available, if they are available, a lot of them, they don't know about it. So what we have done at the foundation is we've hired ambassadors who have these relationships with different communities, different marginalized communities, that can help educate them and bring them into the ecosystem, like bring them into the fold. Hey, do you have an idea? Here's a grant opportunity for you. Let's work on this idea that you have and make it feasible to where you can get a grant. And some of our former awardees have actually gone on to receive other seed funding from other organizations.
So really providing alternatives for, being able to earn on the web. I know that's something that you're pretty passionate about. And so when we look at earning on the web, how much is actually being made on the web right now? We talk about billions of dollars?
So made on the web right now through the methods that are already established. Like right now you have ads that you can earn through, and that's by selling your users information. You also have paywalls where you've been scrolling, and then you come across something, you can't go any further until you sign up for a subscription. And so the conversion rates of those are actually very, very low. And you will not make a lot of money off of that unless you are like one of the bigger organizations. And so that's what we're trying to combat, giving everybody kind of like an equal opportunity to earn. If you're getting views on your site, then you're getting more money.
What are some of the common mistakes people make when they approach this?
Some of the common mistakes that people make is not thinking about it like really holistically. They have an idea already and they're like, oh, we'll just slap on, we'll just say we'll use web monetization just to try to get a grant, without thinking about it like in depth of how this could really actually change the landscape of advertising on the web. So really that's what we've been seeing with some of the applications. We've gotten some great applications though, and some people trying to do some really, really innovative things.
And so you talk about applications. Obviously, there may be somebody out there that's watching and says, listen, how do I get my hand on an application? What's the process? And how do I get engaged?
So yeah, you can go to interledger.org and you can go to grantfortheweb.org. Right now, our call for proposals is closed, but we will be opening up another one very soon. And if you just sign up for our info, we will send out like when we are opening up our call for proposals.
So talk to us about what the future holds for you.
So right now we are expanding Grant for the Web and looking at what are some of the gaps in the ecosystem that we need to fill, and basing our call for proposals off of that. We're also doing research into open payments to see how can this technology be used to uplift people, especially in other countries who are under or unbanked, versus coming out with like, okay, this is something that we think is going to be great, here, use it, and then nobody actually uses it. So we're trying to look at it from a ground up approach. How do you want to use this technology? How would it be more useful, the most useful for you? And building a program around that.
Briana Marbury, our guest here from Interledger Foundation, thank you so much for being with us, and continue to do the work in bridging the gap on the digital divide. Great having you with us.
Thank you so much.
All righty. Well, listen, I want you to stay connected to us right here. We do have more on the social justice forums. We're going to take a quick break, and when we return, we'll have another very special guest.
When taking public transportation, don't touch your phone. Carry hand sanitizer and use it immediately upon leaving the bus or train. Avoid touching your face. If someone is coughing or sneezing, move away. Wash your hands with soap and water as soon as possible. Limit contact with poles. If possible, avoid rush hour. Don't eat or drink on public transportation. Keep your bag off the floor or other surfaces. Avoid directly touching turnstiles. Stay up to date with the latest from your local health department and CDC. If you're struggling to afford your internet bills during the pandemic, there's a temporary government program that may be able to help. It's called the Emergency Broadband Benefit, and it provides up to $50 monthly discount on your broadband bill to qualifying households. Find more information about the program, including if you qualify and how to enroll, at fcc.gov/broadbandbenefit, or call toll-free at 833-511-0311. That's 833-511-0311.
Welcome back to the show. The Coalition for Asian American Children and Families is the nation's only Pan-Asian children's advocacy organization aiming to improve the health and well-being of Asian Pacific American children and families in New York City. Now, CACF provides grants, technical assistance, as well as training to support and strengthen the capacity of Asian Pacific American community-based organizations. Joining us to share now more in this discussion, we are pleased to be joined by the co-executive director of the Coalition for Asian American Children and Families, Vanessa Leung. And thank you, Vanessa, for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
I gave a little intro into your organization, but for people who want to know a little bit more, tell us a little bit more about the organization.
Yes, so CACF, we were founded 35 years ago. We were founded by social workers and social service providers in 1986 here in New York, who felt that our government was not ready, nor prepared, nor understood the needs and the needs of our diverse Asian American community, as well as really prepared to meet those needs in a really culturally responsive and a language accessible way. So it was really important for those providers to feel like they could come together as a united voice to really uplift the stories of those children families who are really struggling in New York. And every day, CACF does our work dispelling the model minority myth. The model minority myth is basically this assumption, a stereotype, that all Asian Americans are successful, they do well, they're quiet, they don't rock the boat, they put their head down and work hard. When in fact, there's so many who are really struggling with poverty, struggling with limited English proficiency, struggling to navigate the really complex systems of supports that the city provides. We also know that the model minority myth in some ways creates this this way that our government doesn't need to be held accountable to those who are struggling, because it erases those struggles from the community. We also know that the model minority myth has been used to justify underinvestments in other communities of color as well. And so our belief is that every day we need to fight racism. We need to fight racism together. And we need to make sure that we're building strong coalition of the diverse AAPI community that represents the East Asian, South Asian, Southeast Asian, Pacific Islander communities, but as well as draw strong connections and ties to other marginalized communities here in New York. So that is at the heart of our work.
Yeah, and so when we talk about advocacy, I know that you're big on the area of advocacy. You've got some things that you're really dealing with. Talk about some of the policies and the initiatives that you're dealing with right now, front and center.
Yes, so some really cross-cutting issues that again erases our community's needs is the lack of good data. And we all know that oftentimes government uses data to be informed of what policies they need to push, what kind of community response there needs to be. And what we've seen is oftentimes data on Asian Americans are not collected. And when it is, it's kind of just subsumed under this one umbrella. What we know what happened with COVID-19 and the pandemic, when we actually try to, as a proxy, disaggregate data by last name, we saw that those with Chinese surnames actually had a huge number of infection rates that were hidden when we looked at city averages for the Asian American community. We also saw that South Asian surnames had a really high increase of hospitalization. when, again, it was hidden when we didn't see it in the average Asian American numbers. So much of our work, and we've been working on this for decades, is to ensure that we have better data, that our city and state agencies collect better data so that there can be better policy and community responses to meet those needs.
Yeah.
I think.
I want to talk. I didn't mean to cut you off. I want to talk
not
a
at
little bit about. I want to talk a little bit about Access Health NYC, because I know that's very important to you, and really having access to good health should be for everyone. But particularly here in New York City, you're doing a job in terms of advocating there.
Yeah, so Access Health New York City, it is one of our collaboratives that we work across communities of color throughout the city and marginalized communities. Those who are really struggling to access the quality healthcare and health insurance and services that are really important and kind of need that assistance, whether it be language assistance, navigating the complexity if they have, if they have issues around long-term implications of their health and really need to understand all their options. Oftentimes, I think what we've seen is there shouldn't be people who are not wanting to know about their health and fear about going to a doctor because they're scared they won't be able to afford it. And so Access Health provides those opportunities of knowing as patients what your Bill of Rights are, helping to navigate the complex systems of assistance that may be available to folks, even if they are undocumented, even if they're struggling with long-term health concerns.
And budget equity is also a topic of discussion for you. How do you see budget equity and how it affects you and how it affects your constituents?
Yeah. So, budget policy, not the most exciting thing, but we do believe that budget policy is social policy. It's what, folks want to invest in and what is important to them. And so for the AAPI community and for actually a lot of human service organizations in communities of color led and staffed by people of color, we see that there's actually a real lack of investments of government agencies to those organizations. This past year, when we saw a real increase in anti-Asian hate incidents, when we saw certain communities in the AAPI community actually see impact of the COVID-19 pandemic way before the shutdown, our community-based organizations were the ones that were present to help those families navigate a really difficult and challenging time. And many nonprofits, I think across the board, do this not because there's all this money in state, but it's actually part of their mission. And so while we've historically seen underinvestments across our communities, that was part of our fight to ensure that at the end of the day, communities that are in need get the resources that can really help them get through really difficult and challenging times, but also make sure that these are things that have been happening for a really long time. And maybe because there was a bit more attention this past year, we were able to kind of win $4 million from the city council, additional investments from the state. But we need to make sure that this is around long-term healing, long-term recovery. That's really important. And that at the end, we want to make sure that we stand together as a community, ensure that a budget is never balanced on the back of those who are in need.
Yeah, everybody's been affected by COVID-19, but can you give us a little bit more insight into some of the challenges and things that you can give us when it comes to the AAPI community and how they've had to deal with COVID-19 and the effects thereof?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've all seen some of the epicenters of the initial COVID-19 were many parts of Queens, where there are large immigrant AAPI communities living. And we all know that when those who have already historically been marginalized in systems, navigating and trying to get through a pandemic is that much harder. When we heard about when COVID-19 before the shutdown, we already saw that certain communities, particularly Chinese community neighborhoods, those small businesses were struggling back in the beginning of last year. You know, people were not coming, tourists were not coming. People were avoiding those neighborhoods of Chinatown, Flushing, Sunset Park. Those businesses were already seeing huge declines in their businesses. And then when the shutdown happened, you know, for so many small business owners who may not, you know, English is not their first language, navigating what was available to them, trying to get a PPP loan was not really accessible. Those continue to be challenges for, you know, small businesses across the board, but even for particular for immigrant communities, it's that much harder to navigate. I think we also saw like a huge, I think in certain challenging times, people like to identify a scapegoat. Want to you'll be able to blame somebody or something. I don't think it helped that our previous federal administration did not really unite our country and actually identified the virus as coming from China and naming it things that I think it made basically put a target on those who are East Asian presenting. There was a level of fear for folks around even just going to do their essential work that was really important. And I think that is really one of the things that are concerns for schools when schools were, you know, returning this year, is making sure that our young people and our families have what they need to feel safe. And when we want to define safety, we want to say that it's really about the presence of wellness. It's not about, you know, this absence of crime or the, you know, or kind of, decrease in incidents overall, but actually making sure that communities have the resources and the services that they need to feel supported in their communities, making sure that they have the connections to people and making community connections across neighborhoods, so that there is, you know, this real feeling of being connected and being in this all together.
You led into my next question when you talked about the previous presidential administration and really the work that the rhetoric that was actually coming out of Washington, D.C., saying that it was the Wuhan virus and coming out of China. And that really did, because I did a couple of stories, really did affect businesses, particularly Asian American businesses, because of the stereotypes and the false information that was actually spread. Can you give us a little bit more insight into what you've learned in terms of how businesses were actually affected and how people actually who were essential workers actually had to really struggle and make it through, given the fact that you had this kind of stereotype and false misinformation that was hanging and looming over their heads?
Yeah, I think it was probably a really dark period for so many folks in trying to be, you know, the businesses were the only ways of actually being able to survive, right? That's what their livelihood was. And I think it became something that they had real concerns. We heard of businesses having to shorten their hours. There was a time when they were trying to, there was lots of just concerns about how they were going to make their monthly payments that they needed to do. There was just really a lot of concerns about what will happen, given that this happened even before the shutdown. The businesses not being able to have the same amount of folks coming through, they paying and being able to pay their workers. We heard a lot of folks who lost their jobs. And I think this is kind of where for CACF, we were able to start an emergency fund that many of our member organizations were able to distribute to folks who really just had no other options in terms of being able to survive through that pandemic. And so hundreds of $1,000s went through to really support families on the ground as they were trying to navigate this kind of downturn in business.
Yeah. I want to take a moment to talk a little bit about Project Charge and the work that's being done there. Make our viewers a little bit more aware of your Project Charge.
Yeah, so this is our health collaborative, really around, centering it like Asian American. What does it mean to have health equity for Asian Americans? And I think some of the key things that constantly come up are the challenges of navigating a healthcare system when English is not your first language. We've seen we've seen it through the pandemic when difficult decisions had to be made about who got health services or not, when there was an overworked healthcare workers who were trying to meet the needs of a number of folks and being understaffed themselves and having to make split decisions about who gets care and who doesn't. And when there was this need to find an interpreter, we've seen that actually becomes a deterrent to actually being able to provide immediate assistance. So Project Charge is really looking at addressing some of these issues systemically around the lack of culturally responsive systems, understanding, a system that may not understand the myriad of cultural challenges to accessing quality healthcare. The fact that so many within the AAPI community come from limited English proficient families. That means that nobody over the age of 14 speaks English well or at all. And we would never want to see a young person have to be an interpreter in a medical situation. But we've seen that happen before as well. So these are the things at Project Charge. We work as a collaborative to look at how do we increase the number of access for families to quality healthcare, affordable healthcare, and ensure that the needs of the diverse community are met.
Yeah, we know that 21% of Asian Americans, New Yorkers, are actually considered to be uninsured. And then also almost 40% of Asian Americans in New York City are actually enrolled in Medicaid. And so certainly some huge health challenges there. And I know that you're on the front lines dealing with that. If people want to get connected to helping to support the Asian American community, your organization, how can they go about doing so?
Yeah, you can, visit our website at www.cacf.org. And then we can also connect to community-based organizations that, serve the diverse Asian American community throughout the 5 boroughs. So as our members who are on the front line, who are direct service providers, they are language specific, ethnic specific, kind of issue specific in their services. But, together we come together as a united voice to ensure that we are united to fight for those most marginalized in our communities.
Vanessa Leung, it's been great having you, and thank you for the conversation and the awareness, and continue the advocacy. And we, of course, will continue to spread the word as well.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Vanessa. All righty. Well, we want to let you know we do have more show. We want you to stay with us as the Social Justice Forums continues. We'll be right back after this brief messages as I get and it gives me a break so I can get my words together. I'll be right back.
that people are dealing with the health crisis, but there's also a lot of food insecurity.
We're giving out healthy food options, and that's what's key here.
If you're a senior, you have a disability, they'll actually deliver meals to you.
The residents are anxious, they're worried, they're scared, they want to be tested.
When things were happening in our community and we couldn't get the help.
There's almost a presumption of criminality that attaches to your skin color.
The site will prioritize those who are at highest risk in the population.
If you feel symptoms and you'd like to visit one of these COVID-19 testing sites here in the Bronx, you may call the State Health Department's hotline.
Important to note about this site is no reservations are needed. This is a walk-in clinic.
A lot of us are out of work and looking for something to do.
We have the machinery and the skills to make large scale of these masks and gowns.
Take care of your people. It's going to go way further than we actually can understand.
Right now, employees like myself are just adjusting to the new reality.
Reporting from BronxNet,
Welcome back. Our next guest is a seasoned media professional with over 20 years of media entertainment marketing experience. She's currently the Vice President of Brand Strategy at iHeartMedia, specializing in multicultural marketing partnerships. Her most recent post was as a senior member of the Warner Media Entertainment Content Partnerships team and serves as the New York City chair of the Black professionals at Warner Media Business Resource Group. And joining us now and sharing more details is that Vice President of Brand Strategy at iHeartMedia and D.E.I leader, Denise Bennett. And thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to talk to you today.
Yeah, and so when we talk about media, we talk about really diversity, and equity and inclusion. When it comes to media, certainly we can see there's that huge disparity that's there. But I know part of your job is also to help to bridge that gap too.
It is. Well, in terms of what I do, I'm focused on multicultural marketing, but in terms of DE&I, that's about the equity within this overall industry, within corporate America in general. And, I've been very fortunate to be able to have a 20-year career in the media industry, but it's not a secret to anyone that there is a lack of representation of Black professionals in general within some of the mid to senior level ranks within the entertainment industry. And, I am doing what I can to continue to be a resource to those coming behind me, to make sure that I'm creating spaces for more professionals of color to be in the overall entertainment industry.
Yeah, and for yourself, you said over 20 years of experience right there in media and marketing. What was the impetus for you to say, listen, I want to be involved in media?
So it's not as fancy as so many people that have these big epiphanies. I'm a kid of the 80s and 90s. And so when I was coming up in high school, I am a musician. At the time, I played 4 instruments in high school. And I had a wonderful music teacher, Christine Mitchell, who, when I was trying to figure out what I should major in, she was like, listen, find something that you like getting paid for and go find a way to do that. I mean, find something that you like to do and find a way to get paid for it. And I was like, well, I just like watching MTV all day. And she was like, there's people that get paid to do that. And so my parents and I, as a team, we decided on music business as a major. And so we looked at schools that had that as a major and landed on Indiana State University in Terre Haute, Indiana, because my future at the time professor, when I went to visit the school, James Slutz, he told me, he said, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to go work at MTV. And he said, if you come here, I'll get you there. And at the time, Indiana State University's music business program had a 100% job placement guarantee. So he was very much like, if you come here, like, we're getting you there because you're not gonna mess up my average. So for 4 years, that's all we did, was be very focused on getting into not just the entertainment industry, but getting into the specific company. I really wanted to work at MTV Networks. And he would send all our entire degree program to the National Association of Music Merchants Convention in Los Angeles every year. And our job was to learn the art of networking and relationship building with all of the companies that were there. And our goal was, you need to score your internship. We were required to do a 6-month internship to complete our degree study. And the first year that I got there, I met a wonderful mentor of mine, a mentor and friend still to this day. His name's Lauren Hammond, who was a representative of VH1 Save the Music. And, such a wonderful example of how we as Black people, and just we as an overall culture, look out for each other. This is a Black man who looked at me, a young Black college student with so much fire and energy to be in the industry and in his company. And he said, listen, you come back to me every year at this conference, and when you are ready, when you're in your senior year, we're going to make this happen. And we stayed in touch, and every year I did exactly what he said. I beelined to the Save the Music booth every year. And in my senior year, I moved to New York and started my internship at VH1 Save the Music, and the rest has been history.
Yeah. Talk to me about the value of internship, because so many times people just want that job and they want to go to the job. But as I was telling, a lot of people who want to work in this business, in this industry, I myself, I interned, and one of my first jobs was I was an intern at Madison Square Garden, and I interned at Madison Square Garden Network with Greg Gumbel. And that led me on the path to really continuing my broadcasting career. But for interns who people who don't think that internship is valuable, just talk about the power of internship for a moment.
My gosh, it's so incredibly valuable when you are, especially when you're interning in the overall industry or the company that you are so interested in. It gives you the pretty rare opportunity to be the biggest sponge possible. You get to ask all the stupid questions because you really don't know. You are essentially just a kid, and you're trying to learn and you're trying to grow. So you get to just ask everybody for everything, and people do want to help you. Good people want to help you and see you grow, and they love seeing these kind of blank slates of future leaders. And so it gave me that chance to meet everybody up, around, and through the company, because I knew that was a company that I wanted to remain in for at least a nice chunk of my career. And when done right, you are setting a foundation of relationships that you will be able to pour into, or also bring value, give some value to, when it does come that time to now start seeking actual employment. And I interned in 2001. I started my internship in the summer of 2001, and I was rounding it out over September 11th. That was an extremely horrible time for our country, the city of New York, as well as from a corporate standpoint. I was terrified that, I'm never gonna be able to work, because people are getting laid off left and right. It was a really hard time for the city and for a lot of corporations. But because I had laid that foundation, when it got to my internship was ending in November and December, I was like, I need to find a job. But I had already laid that foundation. So I was able to connect with all the right people within the company. And I was set up with a nice assistant role in the marketing department within Noggin and the Inn, which was a division of Nickelodeon, still within MTV Networks, now Viacom. So all those, being in internships gives you that opportunity to start building your overall learning and skill foundation, but also your relationship foundation, which is so essential. So I always tell the interns I have, listen, ask every single solitary question, but also the relationships that you make, both with your peers as well as the people that you make within the company. Make sure you are watering those plants while you're here, as well as when you leave, so that, keep yourself top of my mind when you start, when you're ready to, when you're graduating and want me to, you're looking to me for an opportunity, keep yourself top of my mind so that, I'm coming to get you.
Yeah, and relationships are key. I think when you talk about a pathway to success, having skill is good, having talent is good, being gifted is good, but the value of having positive relationships and maintaining those relationships, because one thing that I'll let you talk about is that some of the same people that you see on the bottom are the ones that you see at the top, and some people that you see at the top, the bottom, the ladder works both ways.
Did your grandma tell you that? Be careful how you do people, because same people you saw up, you're gonna see them on the way down. And so it is very much about, I tend to shy away from using the word networking because people are so bad at it. And I try to, couch it in relationship building and making sure that you are making reciprocal relationships where you're bringing value to people and they bring value to you, and, seeing where, again, where people can bring value in so many different ways, but learning how to incorporate people into your life cycle for your greater progression. But yeah, it's very much learning how to treat people, how to allow yourself to be treated. That was certainly a big lesson as I've continued to grow, of, how you do teach people how to treat you, but you also learn how to treat other people, because, those people that you stepped on your way up, all right, you're gonna pay for that on your way down. So be careful how you do people.
Yeah. And talk about, you've had a fulfilling career, and it's been quite fulfilling as you talk about the relationships, the highs, the lows. But what are some of the biggest challenges that you want to probably share with people when they enter into this particular part of the industry?
Well, I think, again, reciprocal relationships is a really important thing. So, not only just reciprocal, but multiple layer relationships. So don't just be focused on trying to get in front of the CEO of the company. Look to the side, look down, in terms of people that are coming up from behind you. Again, seek value in everybody that you meet. Everybody can have some value to you. So that's a huge one. And again, I think so much of learning your own values and whom you are, you start learning how to not stay places where you are not valued, learning how to say, I'm better than this. I am okay, and I know that I expect more from myself, and I value myself. So I'm not going to remain in places and spaces where abuse is happening, or places that are not open to change and growth. You start having a lot more freedom to say, I'm gonna go to places where I'm valued. And that's something that you learn just in life. You don't stay in relationships where you're not valued. So, you try not to do it in your career choices as well. You're going to spend a huge chunk of your life working. So try to identify what are those pleasure centers for you in terms of your career. And, for some people, it is money. Some people will do, they'll do jobs that they hate, but they pay a lot of money. And listen, we got to all pay bills. So we all work for money. We have to survive. But, when you start to look at, am I in places where I'm being respected? Am I valued? Am I stimulated? When those pleasure centers aren't necessarily being met, and you haven't identified, in your current space where they can be met, then you need to start making some choices on what are some next moves that you could make, some strategic moves that you could make for your own progression that do tap into those pleasure centers for yourself.
Yeah, I want to tap into this for a few seconds before we wrap up. Integrated marketing, we hear that a lot in the business, but what does it mean? And talk about your work there.
So integrated marketing in general, and most of the roles that I've been in, you've seen that, most of us, I'm gonna date myself, when we used to have TiVos, like that's when TiVos used to start. We used to skip through commercials. That's 500 years ago. But that is something that has continued on in terms of all the different mediums that we consume, whether it's TV, cable, even some of our streaming opportunities that, traditional commercials are starting to go, they're not the only way to reach consumers. And so now brands are continuing to look for ways that they can engage with consumers in ways that are more authentic and organic to the content that they're consuming. And so you'll find, roles that I've had in TV and again, throughout all the mediums that I'm in, is identifying those solutions for those brands that can align their brand and the content that you're watching that is completely seamless, doesn't take you out of the entertainment or sports or whatever content that you're consuming, but still relays those key brand messages or call to actions that brand wants you to do while still keeping you entertained in the content that you're consuming. So that's the very, very short kind of description of what that means. And it takes a lot of listening and understanding with the brands, but also knowing my own audience. So when I'm thinking about when I was on the TV side, thinking about, would I watch this if this brand showed up in the comedy show that I'm watching, if the actor that I'm watching, if they drank this brand or made a comment about this, is that going to be disruptive to me, or am I still into it? Okay, so I always like to, think from the mind of the consumer. If the consumer would still be into it, then okay, then that's a viable solution. And if it would get the key performance indicators that the brand wants in terms of, is it going to drive brand recall or consideration, or most importantly, purchase, then those are key wins for a brand.
Well, Denise, been very fun talking to you, enlightening. Congratulations on your wonderful career, giving some much needed tips for success. And thank you for being with us here on the Social Justice Forums.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
All righty. Well, we want to let you know that we've come to the end of our show today. We want to let you know also that if you enjoyed the show, good. If you haven't got a chance to see the whole show, Recablecast on BronxNet channel 67 and Verizon Fios, that would be channel 2133. Want to let you know also, you can catch a new episode for us here on the Social Justice Forums next week, where we continue to elevate the discussion, promote civic engagement, bring awareness, and talk about the inequities that many people face. I'm Daren, Jaime saying take care, God bless. You've been watching the Social Justice Forums. We'll catch you next week.